This is Gene Bohensky from Reel to Reel Warehouse, and in this video it's going to be a little bit different. Here we're going to teach you a little bit of tricks of the trade, and specifically about how to clean reels. Not only clean the reels, about refurbish them. Also, we're going to look at the different chemicals that you need to use, and also different chemicals on how to remove labels from different surfaces. So this can really apply to a lot of different things. We're going to use reel-to-reel reels and tapes as the primary focus for this video. So, a lot of the reel-to-reel tapes that you're going to be using are old. They've been in storage someplace, maybe for 40, 50, 60, or maybe even 70 years in some cases. And in many of the cases, there's going to be problems with those reels. They might be dirty, they might have mold, there might be labels on them that are hard to get off. There might be accumulated crud. A lot of times there's some accumulated chemical byproducts or even corrosion from the deterioration of the tape inside. I'm going to show you all these examples in this video and show you the different chemicals that I use to clean them. So let's get started on the aluminum reels. Here's one that looks really nasty. It's all kind of splotchy and yucky. This is a result of a couple of things. It could also be stated a lot of these things were used in rooms where people smoked, so there's often a lot of smoke residue on them. And I think that's what you see here. There's smoke residue. There's also kind of this grime that I think is also from byproducts of outgassing and deterioration of audio tapes. These are easy to clean. And the best chemical to clean those, by the way, is a Spray 9. This is not an advertisement for Spray 9, but this is actually what I use to clean our aluminum reels. And it's the most effective cleaner you'll find to get rid of all that kind of crud. Here's another example of that type of crud. It's kind of a yellowing. This is really something that I think comes mostly from an environment where people smoked. It's also easy to clean with Spray 9. Can't really see this too easily. This is an Ampex reel, kind of a rare one, where they use this standard ubiquitous 3-window design. But inside there's corrosion. And the corrosion is a byproduct of one of the tapes deteriorating. In this case, it wasn't 651. There was some other kind of tape. When they deteriorate, they outgas, and some of those chemicals react with the aluminum. So if you see that, if that's not really easy to clean, you're going to have to live with some of that corrosion because that damage is permanent. Let's move on to labels. This is a Pioneer reel that is currently in the process of being cleaned. There are some labels that were on here, difficult to get off. With labels are interesting because there's probably, in my estimation, at least 5 or 6 types of labels that I've come across of that all have their own unique problems. I'll start with the first kind of label that just easily comes off. You can carefully and slowly peel it off, and it comes off without leaving any residue. The second type of label is one that was on this Pioneer reel. This type of label, the Spray 9 was able to get rid of all of the paper portion of the label, but what was left behind was this gummy, sticky stuff. And that doesn't come off with Spray 9. Sometimes you need something else. Other cleaners that are used for that, I either have Goo Gone. Goo Gone can somehow go after some of that label residue. There's also another product that I use that's actually Pledge Revitalizing Oil. This actually isn't used for cleaning, but the oil does dissolve some of the sticky residue. And sometimes it dissolves the sticky residue where the other cleaners don't. So I always keep this oil on hand. This has helped with a lot of reels and revitalizing them as well. It also revitalizes some of the plastic. So I'd use that in your arsenal. The last type of chemical I would use for labels is alcohol. There's some labels where the adhesive only is dissolved with alcohol. I'll show that a little bit later, but that's particularly on the Sony labels. The old Sony labels were unique, is that they would peel right off and I'd leave this white residue. that can be removed with alcohol. So let's look at some of these other reels. This is another Ampex reel from a studio. You also see that this reel has a lot of things written on it. In some cases, you have a couple of issues. You want to remove the writing. If the writing is a crayon-based writing, it can be removed by a couple of things. Sometimes spray 9 works. Sometimes you need the revitalizing oil. And sometimes what you need to do is add those to those cleaning compounds a little bit of polishing compound. This is what you use when you buff out scratches on a car. I also use that to buff out scratches and writing on the reels. It's very effective, and you can bring these reels back to life. There's also challenges on these painted reels. This is a Techniques reel. It's one of my B-stock scratched reels. This is interesting because it's kind of deteriorated. Whatever tape was on here also reacted with the paint, and the paint on the inside is kind of ruined. And sometimes that's what will happen. Whatever chemicals outgassed from the tape will again ruin the condition of the reel. Here's another Scotch reel. This also has light problems with it, light splotches. The splotches are also due to the chemical residue. And especially, here's another thing about the chemical residue. If these reels were kept in a plastic bag, that's actually sometimes worse, because what happens with plastic, people don't really understand that plastic is not a water vapor barrier. It doesn't keep things dry. Water vapor will go through plastic. And if you're in a hot environment and there's temperature changes, you can get condensation in the plastic bag that forms over time. Together, in a very close environment, that water can do some weird things, especially when combined with the chemical outgassing of the tape. You end up with this crud that forms that needs to be cleaned off. So you want to be aware of that. Let's see some other examples. Here's just some other examples. These are an Akai reel with some splotches and some corrosion marks, and a Techniques reel that has some corrosion marks as well. I tried to clean this up as well as I could, but it wasn't perfect. Now let's look at some of these plastic reels. One of the things about the plastic reels is that you also want to remove labels from those too. One of the hardest labels to remove are these Maxell labels. These round labels that came on this generation tape in the 80s. These are notoriously difficult to remove. I found the only way you can remove it is in a two-step process. First, use the spray 9 to get rid of all the paper parts, and then what's left behind is the gummy stuff that you can get rid of. Sometimes the spray 9 will work on it, but you have to remove it with your hands. It's also not really easy to get rid of. Here's another one of the Maxell labels. Somehow Maxell did a great job. Not only did they engineer great tapes, but they also made sure the labels would stick forever. Go figure. They had real high quality, even in the details. Here's another label that's difficult to get off. This is a classic TDK label that comes on the Ottawa style one-window tapes. Those are also difficult to get off. They need to soak with the spray 9 quite a while. This is a Scotch label from the Japanese type reels. They also have an issue, also not able to get rid of. Ampex had these labels on their two-window reels through the 70s and 80s. Unfortunately, all the tape stock went sticky, but the reels are nice. And what's good about these labels is actually they peel off easy. You can very, very carefully peel them off, and the whole label will come off with no problem. This is the one that's really interesting. These are the the Sony reels. All of the Sony reels, for the most part, had these strange labels. I've never seen them anywhere else. They come right off. Here's one that just pops right off. No problem. What's left behind is this white residue. And this white residue actually only comes off with alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. You need to put the alcohol on it, rub it in, and then wait a minute or two, rub it in again, and wipe it down. You might need to do it twice, but it's the only way to get those labels off. Here's a couple of old Scotch reels. This is a classic Scotch reel that you get. It's maybe 60, 70 years old. It has a couple of problems. You have a lot of labels that were hard to get off. You have writing. This writing was able to come off with some Sometimes it comes off with the spray nine, sometimes with the alcohol, sometimes you need to have the polishing compound. You know, if you get the right polishing compound, the same polishing compound that you remove the yellow with on the headlights of your cars, you can actually polish these plastic reels and they'll come back like new. The other issue with these plastic reels, especially the Scotch tapes, a lot of the acetate tapes, they didn't include any mold inhibitors in those compounds. So there's usually mold that grows on the tape, and the mold also grows on the inside of the reel. So a lot of times what you need to do is you need to wind the tape off, and then you're going to put your spray nine in the actual cloth itself. And then what you want to do is you want to put that cloth inside the reel like this and pull it through when it's wet, and you'll be able to get rid of all the gunk and dirt on the inside of the reel. And believe me, a lot of these old reels, they'll be really dirty, but you can bring them back to life. And for the last part, here's another Scotch reel with some old masking tape on it. This is also very difficult to get off. This is also going to take a multiple time try. I'm not so sure I'm committed to it for this reel, but I wanted to show it as an example. If you have reels and you want to bring them back to life, you know, the right cleaning compound is going to do it. At Reel to Reel Warehouse, when we sell empty reels, most of the time we sell the ones that are like new right out the bat. But there are cases, if we can restore them and clean them thoroughly, we do that. And I just wanted to share with you some of the different chemicals that we use and methods that we use to do that, so that you too can restore your valuable reels and tapes and get them be excited again when they're on your machine. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope this was helpful.